His father, Baraka, was a legendary poet and playwright. His mother, Amina Baraka, herself a renowned poet. The father of 3 daughters, Mayor Baraka is a published author and well regarded in the entertainment industry for his appearance on the Grammy Award-winning album, The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, and his authentic role as an educator. Ladies and gentlemen, I introduce to you our keynote speaker. Can we rise? Give him a round of applause. Mayor Baraka.
Thank you, brother. Hold the line. Good morning, good morning. I just want to first thank Brother Hackett for that introduction. It's a pleasure to be here. We both Howard University brothers up here. He was talking about when I was a kid running for vice president of the student government. I wasn't sure if you made that clear. I was a young boy running for the student government. Then he was in law school. Now he's a judge, and I'm the mayor. So yeah, God is good. So also I want to acknowledge the mayor of this city, Mayor Jackson of Montclair. Thank you for being here this morning. I see you brought your crew with you, brother. Can't leave home without them. I appreciate you and the work that you're doing up here as well in Montclair. And you know, it's a pleasure to be here for the brothers of Omega Psi Phi. Yeah, they deserve a round of applause too, right? Yeah. You know, I guess we have a little relationship because I went to Howard University at least. And I know a little bit about Howard University and Omega Psi Phi. Have a little relationship. That's good to know. And you know, and they share a relationship with a brother who is very important to our history and has been very important to me as a kid growing up reading, and that's Carter G. Woodson. And Carter G. Woodson, with the support of the fraternity, was able to launch Negro History Week, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Which is became the foundation for what we know as Black History Month, which is incredibly important. I don't know if everybody knows that tidbit of history that are not taught that you know, Carter G. Woodson you know, created the Negro History and Literature Week, and his relationship to the fraternity, and that became the impetus for what we celebrate in modern day as Black History Month. But those of us who are a little bit more learned know that Black History Month or Black History happens every day, and it's not just a month, right? I mean, this place is so segregated, they segregate us into a month. The smallest month at that. But it's a pleasure. I'm not going to be too rough this morning because I want to be invited back to Montclair, and I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings this morning. So if I say something rough, it's meant for the person sitting next to you. You know, Monday we have been honored and given the opportunity to contemplate the legacy of a man who is known as the drum major for justice, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. We get to take a day off on Monday. And it's interesting to know that we have been given this day off, and this day has been commercialized for all intents and purposes by the same people who plotted to assassinate Martin Luther King in the first place. Yeah. And I don't say that to lament, but to be clear that there's much more work to do, and to highlight what Carter G. Woodson said, or what he taught us, that no one has to force us to take a lesser position, that without proper education, we take the lesser position ourselves. At some point, we have to move from just celebrating King's legacy to start building on it. Dr. King was very clear on the uneven and unequal existence that this country was birthed and nurtured from. He called it Two Americas. In fact, during his death, he gave speeches often talking about the other America. Two Americas, one that grew strong from white supremacy and economic exploitation, that fed some of us a daily dose of self-hatred, and that had comforted us with the denial and neglect, and that everything that was wrong with the country was created by us, and had its origins deep in our complexion and culture, and have taught many whites equally to enjoy a privilege of being better than you, even if they were starving, they couldn't find jobs or decent opportunity, that even if they were low, that they could always be better than you. King said in Selma that it could be said of slavery era that the white man was given the world and blacks were given Jesus, and that in Reconstruction era, the Southern aristocracy took the world and gave poor white people Jim Crow. And when his wrinkled stomach cried out for food in which his empty pockets could not provide, he ate Jim Crow. And when his undernourished children cried out for the necessities that his low wages could not provide, he showed his children the signs of Jim Crow, and he taught them that they were better as well, and so they too ate Jim Crow. And so the idea of being equal to us has become more devastating to them than the fact that 143 million Americans, 43% of them live in poverty. And 13 million children are poor and die of curable diseases because they too are included in the 37 million Americans that have no health care, even with the Affordable Care Act. That there are 400 families make over $90,000 an hour, and we haven't even found the will to get most of us to 15. They at least 60 million of them that voted for Donald Trump, 1.6 million in New Jersey alone, 1.6 million, that's 40% of New Jersey residents voted for Donald Trump. That they would vote for Donald Trump anyway, even as he weaponized white supremacy in full public view. That he built walls and shut down the government while hundreds of thousands of mid to low wage workers have to do without a paycheck for a month, instead of putting millions of Americans to work by investing in infrastructure, roads, bridges, and tunnels, where we need it in Newark the most for water infrastructure. And then there's us, who believe that with a little education and somewhat of our position in society, that we have all the answers, and if folks just did what we did, everything would be okay. We think that we got all what we had because we have a great resume. And I'm going to tell you, ain't nothing wrong with your resume, but there was a time when no one would even read your resume. We are worse than those who choose the back door knowingly out of conditioning, because we choose the back door thinking that it's actually the front door. You know, some of y'all choose the back door thinking you in the front. You in the basement, swear to God you at the roof. We celebrate Dr. King by talking about a boy preacher that went to Morehouse, that stood on the steps of power and proclaimed his dream of a day America would look past his skin color. Many of us didn't understand Dr. King then, and we don't understand him now. Many of us who we don't know who he really was, as we have been given an alternative king orchestrated in the imagination of our enemies. We are taught king by those that despised him. King knew this country had a problem, a sick schizophrenia that he tried to hold the mirror to its face. He tried to develop an offensive strategy that we miss completely today. We think he went to D.C. just to tell people to love him or to have people recognize his humanity. No, he went there to cash a check, he said, a check that has been constantly marked insufficient funds. A promissory note that was written in the words of this Constitution and assured by millions of our ancestors whose bones rest at the bottom of the Atlantic and whose blood stains the fabric of this very democracy. That's the king that I read about, the king that I know. Everything we have and everything we desire was paid for generations ago. As far as I'm concerned, they owe me welfare and a job. Yeah, I need welfare and a job. Farm subsidies, housing benefits, free tuition, tax rebates. I take it all and it still won't be enough. It ain't enough to make up for what we lost and are still losing or losing to this day. And we shouldn't be ashamed to get what's owed to us. It is not enough for us to attack individual acts of hatred and racism. It's not enough for us to be against Donald Trump or just against white nationalism. We have to be against the policies that feed and foster hatred and inequality. Can't just focus on the words without focusing on the works. Donald Trump is a distraction. His tweets, the Russians, and foolishness in the White House hold our attention while they take away basic subsidies for families, undermine and dismantle the Voting Rights Act, deregistering millions of black and brown people around the nation, attacking health care and indigenous people's sovereignty, criminalizing immigrants of color from around the world, and strengthening white Christian nationalism right before our very eyes while we focused on the Russians. I don't know what the Russians have done, but I sure know what these Republicans are doing to us every day. They had taken the entire Supreme Court while rolling back any sentiment of criminal justice reform and creating an atmosphere of violence and hatred. Now, I'm not so much worried about Donald Trump as I'm about the 60 million Americans who heard and saw his behavior and voted for him anyway. I'm not so much worried about Donald Trump in D.C. as I'm worried about my neighbor who lived next door to me, who says hello to me every morning, but works every single day to make sure that the policies Donald Trump represents is turned into law. That's what worries me the most. I'm not so much worried about Donald Trump and his tweets that I'm worried about my legislators here in the state of New Jersey who work every single day to support the policies that come out of the White House. I'm more concerned about them. I'm more afraid of them. They're more dangerous to me than Donald Trump is. So it's not enough to be against Donald Trump or just focused on his tweets. We have to be focused on improving our conditions in the state of New Jersey every single day. So we have to have a mind to resist, but more importantly, we have to have a mind to build. We have to build. It's not enough to be woke and stay woke. We have to stay informed. Being woke is just a state of consciousness. You can be woke and still not know anything. Kids say stay woke. I say stay woke, yeah, and then read something. Woke just mean you conscious. Mean you alive with me and everybody else. Now you got to read, because when you read, you inform. And when you inform, you can do something about your condition. Then you can begin to build. So stay woke, stay informed, and stay active. We have to build what we want to see. I know we become experts at criticizing each other and less proficient at building. If I called everybody together to complain about what's going on in our community, we'd have a crowded room. If I have a meeting the next day about what we're going to do about it, the room gets smaller. And then if I have a meeting the next day after that about who's going to volunteer to lead what we talked about doing, the room will get even smaller than that. We have to have the mind to build, not just understand or quote Dr. King. We have to do what Dr. King did. A lot of us quote Dr. King every day. We're very proficient in mocking the words that Dr. King said, but we have very little practice in doing what Dr. King did. In my city, I'm arguing with people on the internet about whether we should have 10 stories or 12-story buildings when a third of our children live in poverty. 40,000 people on a waiting list for housing. Each year, dozens of our children lose their lives to street violence and drugs. Our schools are the fourth most deeply segregated in the nation by race and class, more than 50 years after Brown versus Board of Education, in one of the wealthiest states in the nation, where the median wealth for white families is $271,402. Let me say that again. The median wealth of white families in the state of New Jersey is $271,402, and the median wealth for Latino families in the state of New Jersey is $7,020. I didn't miss any zeros. And the median wealth for black families is $5,900. It would take us almost 200 years to fill the gap, the uneven and unequal gap of wealth in the state of New Jersey. And our children are 30 times more likely to be incarcerated for the same crimes committed by white children in this state. Yeah, it's shocking to some of you. In a democratic blue state like New Jersey. And I know some of you say we just need to make enough money to move out of these places where the zip code that can determine our life expectancy. We got to get away so we can get a better quality of education and health services. Well, let me tell you, the data shows that even poor white families have greater choices to move in more affluent neighborhoods than middle income and affluent black families. And one step more, most black children that grow up in households that are middle class or higher are still more likely to not have that wealth transferred to their children. Therefore, it is not generational. Our problems are systemic and not just about what people feel about us or where we live. These issues must be addressed systemically and purposefully and deliberately because these problems were created on purpose. On purpose. Recently, the state pension board took a vote to determine whether they should take their investments out of Nike because Nike supported Colin Kaepernick. And I should say, they're not their investments, they're our investments because the pension is paid for by us. There's a high-level executive in this state who's a friend of mine, Micheline Davis, and I'm going to say her name. Who works at St. Barnabas, I spoke to her a couple of days ago, who's still going through problems being publicly attacked and harassed and followed even, maligned in public and events that she go to, people outside picketing and threatening her because she asked on the internet, she put a statement up where officers going to be trained not to shoot black boys. She was right. And I know some of you are taping this and going to put it out there. When you do it, I just want you to spell my name RASBARAKA. Mayor of Newark said Micheline Davis was right. Well, the city of Newark is under a consent decree because we treated black people substantially different. In fact, the use of force data came out of the state of New Jersey, revealed that excessive use of force and illegal stops and containments were disproportionately and overwhelmingly focused and targeted at communities of color, particularly black men. We have strangled them for selling cigarettes, shot them in the back at traffic stops, in some instances at point-blank range while wearing seatbelts. Children murdered for playing with toy guns, for wearing hoodies in wrong neighborhoods at the wrong time, shot in their cars for playing hip-hop music too loud. Someone needs to focus on our children, our families, on purpose right now. And if we don't, then nobody will. And we don't even have the right to point out that there is a problem or even kneel at a football game. Then if we can't do that, then folks, we don't have the will or the power or the voice or even the courage to protect our own babies and our own families. If we allow Micheline Davis to be attacked because she raised the question, who's going to be trained not to shoot black boys, then we in bad shape. Particularly since you know that black boys are being shot. Hell, not only do we need to train police officers not to shoot black boys, we need to train black boys not to shoot black boys. Our lives are so inconsequential. We feel so little about each other, and people feel so little about our humanity that it's okay to take our life, and then to raise a question about it becomes the controversy. The controversy is not in that we are dying. The controversy is that you have the nerve to say we are dying. Yes, sir. That's why this day is important. This celebration is important. We have to lift Dr. King's name and what he stood for because they don't have to put you in chains when you line up to be taken away in chains. They don't have to hang you from trees or light poles, just give you access to drugs and guns. They don't have to make reading illegal, just get you to abhor books and remove your image from it, then make you feel guilty for asking to see yourself in the educational process. They don't have to drive you into poverty. The system is designed that you be poor. Designed so the opportunity for you to go to jail is greater than the opportunity you get to go to high school. The opportunity for you to get a college degree is less attainable than it is for you to buy an automatic weapon in your neighborhood. That is why we need fearless and creative young people. And fearless and creative young people can't be born out of trepidation, cautiousness, out of deal making, and cowardice. If our children are scared, it's because our mothers and fathers are scared. If they don't have a desire to change and overturn what's going on, because we have kept them from that idea under the guise of protecting them. Our protection of them has actually become the reason that we cannot overcome. We have to tell them the truth. When we talk about King, we have to tell them the truth and what King meant to America. When at the end of King's life, he was one of the most unpopular men in this country. That the clergy came out and spoke against King daily. The black clergy came out and spoke against King all the time, daily. When King was just talking about desegregation, he was okay. When he came up north and started talking about other things, he became a problem. When he began to unite poor whites and working class blacks, when he began to start talking about the economy and the war in Vietnam, then those people who did not like that plotted the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King. We have to make something different happen, y'all. Something different has to happen. This year must be the year that we act. The year we develop an offensive strategy. The year we look to each other for help. The year we build. We can't just celebrate King by discussing how terrible things are, but by measuring how much we have built and how far we have to go. We have to be in the tradition of those who came before us. If young people, if you don't know these names, ask your teachers why not. We have to be in the tradition of Q and Turner, of Tubman and Truth, of Douglass and Du Bois, of Highland Garnett, of Richard Allen and Absalom Jones, of Ernest Just and Carter G. Woodson, of Dr. Hale Williams and Charles Drew, of Madam C.J. Walker and Dr. King, of Goodman and Cheney. And we have to be in a tradition of all of those kids from A&T who sat at the Woodworth counter, of Rosa Parks and Medgar Evers, of Fannie Lou Hamer and Malcolm X, of Huey Newton and Angela Davis and all three Jacksons, Jesse, George, and Jonathan, of Fred Hampton and Amiri Baraka, and the list goes on and on and on and on. And if you don't know those names, you're in trouble. We have to work and be against our own demise. Be against our own demise, not just in words, but in the work we do. We can't celebrate King and support a $5 billion wall. Support a $5 billion wall to keep black and brown immigrants out. It's a country of immigrants except you. You're always talking about how great the immigrants are in this country except you. We can't be for a $5 billion wall and for Dr. King at the same time. We can't celebrate King and not fight for increased wages and end the poverty. You can't argue that we can't have increased wages and support Dr. King. Dr. King asked for a universal basic income. That's what Dr. King said. He said everybody should get a wage anyway, period, whether they have a job or not. That's Dr. King. Read and understand what Dr. King said. You can't celebrate King and not support everyone having the right to vote, whether they're free or incarcerated. Can't celebrate King and not stand against unjust wars and the proliferation of guns in our community. We can't celebrate King and not be against inequity. In fact, you can't celebrate King by taking a day off on his birthday. That would mean you and the several other millions that hate King will celebrate his day almost the same way. There are people who are taking off from work who hate Dr. King. And so if you're taking off from work and love Dr. King, you and them are doing the same thing. So what are you doing differently on your day off when you're celebrating the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King? We have to celebrate King by working to finally get that promissory note fulfilled, by getting that check cashed. We got to get the check cashed. I know it's difficult and overwhelming at times, and it seems we disagree more than we have time to mount a strategy. But we have to know that even in our disagreement, we must remember our higher cause, the larger issues. And at our lowest point, we have to know that God is with us. We can't forget that. Even at our lowest point, we have to know that God was with us. I had an opportunity to go to Ghana over the holidays. And I went to Cape Coast Castle. It was my second time there. The Cape Coast Castle is a fort. It's a fort with a beautiful church at the top, and at the bottom is the slave dungeons. My second time, the first time there, I was just in awe of the inhumanity that existed there. The second time, I was able to really contemplate what was happening in this place. And our guide took us through all of the dungeons and the history of what was happening there, and it was so horrific. But the thing that stuck with me the most, we went up top to look at the cannons, and we looked over the walls of the cannon, and you could see down in the Atlantic Ocean. And at the bottom, there's a door. They called it the door of no return, where they march slaves out of that door of no return. They say it's the door of no return because either they fed you to the sharks or they put you on a ship and you had to sail across the Atlantic to make your way here. But right there at the base of that is the Atlantic Ocean. They call it the Gulf of Guinea. And I learned while I was in Ghana, it's the first time I learned this, and it made my trip that much more inspiring. I learned that the hurricanes that land in the Caribbean, in the Americas, the hurricanes that are beating on the shores of the Western world, the hurricanes that find their way to Louisiana, that find their way to Mississippi, they find their way to Brazil and Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic and Haiti, the hurricanes that march up this way, that come up to New Jersey where we are, begin and get their strength and get their birth at the foot of the door of no return, that the hot air from the Sahara mixes with the damp air at the foot of the Atlantic, at the base of the slave quarters, that right there, that air spins around, and it's the beginning of some of the worst hurricanes that the Western world has seen. And it was the first time in my 49 years of living on the planet that I became completely convinced that God is real. I was convinced at that moment. I said, lo, and who else could be responsible for this? Who else could take all of the history, the hatred, and the humiliation and ball it up in the palm of their hand in the air and blow it from the east to the west and make you remember for the rest of your life everything that you've done from start to finish to my people? Only God has the power and the authority to do that. I walked out of that place the first time with my head down, the second time with my chest out and my head up and my shoulders back, knowing that I was a child of God. And I almost felt bad that it gave me comfort. It almost felt bad. I started thinking of, He is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? He is the strength of my life. Who shall I be afraid of? I started feeling that way as I walked out of that place. I took comfort in believing that God was real. That the Western world is still paying for the damage it caused to millions of Africans across the diaspora. That same God who called the winds together is the same God we lean on to continue to push our way forward. Same God that led Harriet through the Underground Railroad. The same God that let Myrlie Evers bring her husband's killer to justice decades later. Same God that placed King's Bible in the hands of President Barack Obama as he took the oath of office. Young people, I know sometimes things seem like it's terrible and they won't get better. I just got to tell you about a God I know. When they arrested Dr. King, when they put him in jail in Birmingham, when they put the cell to jailer, when he put him in jail, he locked his Bible up with him. He took the Bible as well, and the Bible you open up, it has King's number in the Bible. You know, they give you a number when you get locked up. That Bible was locked up that day, but the jailer didn't know what he was doing, because when King left, the Bible left too, right? And King got through Jim Crow. He got all these places, and the Bible got through those places too. And King was assassinated, but his Bible lived on. And the Bible got through Jim Crow, got through segregation, got through Brown versus Board of Education, got through all of this stuff we deal with every day. Got through the riots, got through the wars, got all the way up to the White House. That same Bible that was arrested in Birmingham with Dr. Martin Luther King found this place at the most powerful moment in history, when the first African-American president became the most powerful man in the history of this world. And Barack Obama put his hand on the same Bible that King was arrested with. Only God can take the rejected stone and make it the cornerstone. Can take the stone that the builders reject and make it the foundation for power in this country. Now the whole world is talking about President Barack Obama. Even they talking about him because they don't like him, or they talking about him because they miss him. Even all of y'all that was lukewarm on Barack Obama, pray that you have Barack Obama. On Trump's best day, you wish you had Barack Obama in the White House. So this is our year to build. This is our year to make something happen. Our year to create and develop. After we sing, we got to build. After we pray, we got to stand up. We got to get up and we got to do something. We got to get involved. We can't just know what Dr. King said. We have to work on what Dr. King worked on. We have to make this state what Dr. King would want it to be. We have to make this country a place that Dr. King would want to live in. It's not enough to just serve. We have to serve what's right and what's good. And we have to be willing to put our lives on the line for our people. We have to put our lives on the line for our people. We have to put our lives on the line for our people. We have to put our lives on the line for our people and stop taking crumbs and pretending that it's the loaf of bread. God bless y'all. Long live Dr. King.
Give it up for the mayor. Wonderful.